Hello everyone. I apologize beforehand for my voice today. The weather where I live has been crazy these days, and this is the result of that. But I'll do my best, I promise. Well, hello everyone, and welcome. It's great to have you here. We know that making time during the week is sometimes a titanic task, but I promise will be a real investment. So, thank you so much, and welcome to the first of many webinars to come by Optimational. If you couldn't make it today, don't worry, since the recording with subtitles will be available later on. This webinar in particular is called Multilingual Content Strategies, First Steps Towards Achieving an International Presence. And will last around 40 minutes, but 40 minutes, I promise you, of plenty of information for you to have an insight into this interesting topic. I'm sure you're thinking, what a long name. But I assure you that it correlates to the main takeaways. And I'll delve deeper into it in a minute. But before moving on to the juicy part, let me introduce myself. My name is Alma Taniana. It is a pleasure to meet you. I'm an English translator, teacher of Spanish as foreign language, and an adventurer in the UX writing world. My role within the company is that of the Spanish Department Director, and as you may have noticed, I'll be your host today during this webinar. I'll leave my LinkedIn profile here in case you want to get to know me better, or just drop by to say hello and ask me any questions that may arise after this webinar. I'll be happy to help you out. Okay, so without any further ado, let's begin. If you follow us on social media, you may have noticed that we've been discussing this topic throughout last year and at the beginning of 2022. And we'll continue to do so because it is at the core of our company. At Optimational, our main goal is to help our clients in the global expansion of their businesses. And we do this by breaking down language barriers so that their businesses can increase and improve their international web presence. How do we do this? Surprise, surprise, through multilingual content strategies, the cornerstones of a seamless and efficient international communication, and through SEO optimized content that customers can relate to, which is the most crucial element today to avoid being forgotten on the internet. We truly believe in the power of words as means for global expansion. That being said, and to capitalize on the power of words, we believe that a multilingual content strategy plays a key role in going global. For many of you, such a strategy is something new. That's why in this webinar, we'll walk through the first steps of this complex but profitable process by following this table of contents as a roadmap. That way, we can all get to the same destination. Let's set ourselves in context with an interesting fact, and by no means minor. According to the research results of Gold.io, now part of the Globally company, more than 67% of people served globally claim to have made at least one cross-border purchase in their lives. However, there is another interesting fact, that 1 out of 5 respondents said that language translation was an obstacle to purchasing on a foreign site. So what does this information reveal? Well, mainly two things. First, that 67% is quite a high number not to pay attention to. Those are guaranteed business opportunities because it is not a prediction, but something that is already happening. And if at least 1 out of 5 considers that language barrier is a serious obstacle, companies should do something about it so as not to lose out potential deals, sales, leads, which have nothing to do with product quality or the efficiency of advertising campaigns or good after-sales customer service. Although English is probably the most frequently used language in online content, localization remains an important aspect because, according to Google resources, only 1 out of 4 users understand English. That is to say, that if you only devote your efforts to publishing content only in English, you are leaving out, listen to this number, 75% of the world's global population. Surprising now. We recently participated in a marketing conference and we asked the audience some questions. I thought it would be relevant to include them in this presentation. The first two were, is your website translated? If so, into how many languages? The two most popular answers were kind of the opposite. Many answered that it is not translated at all, and many that it is translated not only to one language but into two or more languages. Then a second question was asked, who translated your website? The results were stunning since only few people answered they use machine translation. And it was helpful to find out that many people have their website translated by professionals. I'm not saying that using machine translation is a crime, but if we resort to using MT, then we have to let our visitors know that, because otherwise it can damage the brand's credibility and reputation, increase your bounce rate, and all these things combined will have a negative impact in the overall website ranking. Now, going back to the people who answered that yes, they were translating their websites by professionals, let me tell you that this is not it. This is not the whole story. It is important to ask ourselves some of these questions when doing so. Let's imagine I'm a client. So when translating my website, do I have a specific content strategy in mind? Do I localize it for a specific purpose to reach a specific goal? Well, if you haven't thought about it yet, I'm here to guide you. This question was, does a multilingual content strategy entail? It's a broad topic, and I consider this webinar as an introductory talk on this matter. To address this question, we must first talk about what a multilingual content strategy is. Although don't be fooled by the word multilingual, because it isn't about the language itself, but about the market, the country, in which that language is spoken. For instance, not just English, but US English, or English from England. Not Spanish, but Spanish from Spain, or Puerto Rico, or Argentina. A multilingual content strategy is the result of the combination of language plus market plus content plus strategy, meaning the adaptation of content for a new market. This adaptation must be customer-centric and carefully designed for a specific market. Therefore, its elements will vary depending on different factors such as the market, of course, the budget, the time period. The budget is very important. The budget is the money that the client is willing to invest in that strategy. The time. In this presentation, I split the strategy up into 4 good practices, but let me insist on the fact that all of them constitute the same process. We have conducting research, we have defining SMART goals, we have developing a scalable process, and at last, but not least, as I might say, measuring, learning, and improving the strategy. If we as clients put efforts into going global, we must be aware of the benefits that a multilingual content strategy can bring about. Every text or copy that is present in our websites or social media, from a skip button to a blog post entry, has an impact on our users, potential leads, potential clients. Therefore, among the many benefits of multilingual content, we can say that it helps to build trust. By having a multilingual strategy in place, your potential customer will feel that your company cares about them. So it shows a company that cares. This trust-building process will lead to an increase in sales, since the more visitors we get, the more chances there are that a visitor will become a potential buyer in the future. Reach new audiences, open your business to other markets, worlds will help reach your potential clients in different parts of the globe. It helps improve UX, also known as user experience. By talking in the user's language or languages, their journey throughout the website will be improved. That's for sure. Working on the customer's perceptions, feelings, and expectation is a significant factor to address if you seek to improve your business position in the market and be recognized and chosen amid competition with existing brands. Therefore, by localizing your website, the user experience will be improved, thus leading to all the previously mentioned benefits. More traffic, more leads, more sales, because the sales process will be streamlined. And now that you know what multilingual language content is important, let's talk about designing the strategy. Where do I start? This is a good question. Preparing your business to reach larger audiences. When creating your multilingual content strategy, there are key practices, in this case 4, to make sure your content strategy is successful. And as I already mentioned, have conducting research. You need to define and understand the market and audience you're targeting. Setting goals. This will allow you to measure your results and improve them and improve the strategy or change it or adapt it over time if necessary. And develop a scalable process, a process that will adapt to your business needs. If after following the first 3 steps you learn that you have not succeeded the way you expected, or that everything went great and you reached your goal, you want to keep on including more content, more languages, it's okay. That's what the last step is for. I'll explain every step in the following slides. Let's start with conducting a research. Researching the markets, the goals, the languages, the audiences. The first one, and in my opinion, the most important, is conducting the research. As I said, exploring markets, goals, languages, and audiences. This one is an essential element for all content planning that transcends every industry, time, and space. The research for complete data. Bear in mind that every successful marketing campaign starts with research. Through market research, we're ready to make informed decisions while reducing any potential risk that may arise and taking advantage of the internationalization efforts of your company. Research can be done in many different ways. Maybe you can resort to Google Analytics, you can carry out interviews and surveys, use Google Trends, carry out UX research as well, and many more options as well. When researching, I advise you to focus on the market, the audience, and the language you're aiming at reaching. Look for business opportunities for your products and services, the products and services you're offering. Make sure that you and your potential clients are on the same page as regards pricing. Take a look at the competition strategies and plans. Do they have their websites translated? Make sure you have a clear understanding and idea of who you are targeting and in what language. If you are targeting, for example, a Canadian audience, in which language you are planning your strategy? Will it be in French? Will it be in English? What is it that your audience search in search engines, the keywords they use in their markets? All these aspects will have a positive impact on the results of the multilingual content strategy. Setting goals. Another step when creating a strategy is defining the goals. Not just general random goals, but specific ones. Now I propose the following. Take a moment to think of a goal you want to achieve. Okay, ready? Now try to analyze how specific it was. I mean, have you thought about how you plan to achieve it? By which means? What time frame? How will you measure the results? If you haven't, no problem. It happens. However, it's also something we need to work on if we are to design assorted strategies. Determine SMART goals. Remember that word, acronym, SMART. Will help you stay on track and make sure your opportunities are aligned with your products and services. It will also allow you to timely readjust the process when something doesn't go according to plan A. So the key takeaway here is that it is crucial to define SMART goals. Maybe now you're thinking, what does SMART stand for? It is an acronym, as I said, that stands for specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely or time-bound. In other words, each of these concepts answers the questions what, how much, how, and when. Easy to remember, isn't it? By setting up targeted, data-driven objectives, you'll be able to define and execute a content strategy that is focused on a given market and that speaks in the local language in their community members. And this ultimately results in more content and brand appealing and better customer engagement. This is an example of what a general initial goal looks like, increasing the number of leads in the US. So here we can tell that the general idea is getting new leads in a different country or region, in this case the US. By doing this, maybe getting new potential clients in the future. Even though it seems at first that we have all figured out, this goal is indeed still general because it doesn't have specific answers for questions like, what is the specific plan? How many new leads is the client trying to get? What is it the client is trying to do to get those leads in the US? Are they going to translate, localize, transcribe the content? And in any case, are they using content from the whole website or just from the blog, the services page, maybe? When the client is expecting to do it? Now, let me show you a SMART goal example. Increasing the number of leads to 1,000 per month in the US by the end of Q4 through the localization of our blog into English. Here we're answering the 4 SMART questions. What? Increasing the number of leads in the US. How much? 1,000 per month. When? By the end of Q4 for the ones who doesn't know, the 3 last months of the financial calendar of a company. And how? By localizing the blog into English. Not the whole website, not the services page, but the blog, and into American English. Develop a scalable process. We have reached step with practice number 3. At this point, when the client has done some market research, define what goals they want to accomplish, it is time to start defining and designing the process itself. Planning this process will help solve problems that the client may encounter when adapting content to new markets. The client will consider the budget they can or are willing to invest, which will depend on the content, the sections of the website or social media, the team that will intervene in each case, the workflow, and the technology. Selecting the content. This is crucial. The goals are an essential step in this process. When answering the how question of the client's SMART goal, it is crucial to determine which content they're going to focus on in order to reach clear results. To do this, they need to consider the goals, what the best performing content is, what drives the target audience's interest, and the resources available. The content the client selects will underpin their business's goals. One way of knowing which content is worth localizing at the time being is analyzing matters such as the existing content that is more likely to engage audiences, the content that should remain in the source language at this point, the content that can make the business successful in this new target market, and that is adaptable, and so on and so forth. Two other aspects that are highly considerable are the best performing sites and the target audience's interest. Let's cover now the best performing sites. Here you can take a look at the existing content that best performs in the source language and give it a try in the foreign language. The client can resort to Google Analytics, for example, to find out which sites are driving more traffic, or consider the landing pages to assess what is it that interests an audience the most. Talking about audience, let me highlight that it is a must to prioritize the audience. The process of localization seeks to make content, a software, a website, an app, a product marketable for customers the client is trying to reach in the new country or region. I bet this last one, the resources, to conclude this last step. Not because it is the least important, but because it involves the previous aspects. It is worth noting that it is not necessary to go all in at once. There are website sections and content material that can be taken into account first while the client is testing approaches. And there are also different approaches the client can choose with distinct levels of quality or even apply both. For instance, localization, which includes a professional linguist plus another linguist who will edit that result in text, or maybe machine translation plus editing. That is machine translation and a linguist editing that machine translation output. Maybe the client can try localizing the content that best performs and resort to machine translation plus editing for content with less visibility. Localization is a great way of using the content available in new markets. There are different linguistic processes that are more budget-friendly than others because some of them require certain tools and bigger teams. And with this information in mind, with all of this information in mind, you can decide what content can absolutely need to be localized. What content can remain in the source language? What content may not be useful or appealing to this new audience that you're targeting? So we need to bear in mind the best performing sites, as I said, the goals, the target audience's interest, and the resources available. Now, let's move on to the workflow. The workflow must facilitate the expansion of the brand and help reflect the needs of the new target market and audience. Some common steps of the workflow include website localization and translation, SEO keyword research, copywriting, also at a visual level, graphic design, etc. Here are some examples of different types of workflow. For example, SEO keyword research, an SEO expert will be in charge of researching and analyzing the way customers search in Google, plus including those keywords in the translation effectively. Then editing the translation and performing the final quality control. Then we can resort to other kinds of workflow like translation, which involves a professional linguist plus another professional linguist who will edit the translation. And then last, the final step, quality assurance. Let's move on to the team that is going to take part in the strategy. So it is of utmost importance that it is structured according to the workflow chosen. Let's ask ourselves questions like, will my team be made up of native linguists? Will it be an experienced team of linguists that has flexibility to handle the tools needed and that has expertise in the field? Will it be an in-house localization team? Again, the client needs to consider the timeline in which the strategy will be implemented, the final quality aim at, the investment that they're willing to make, among many other things and aspects. The team needs to fit in the plan to achieve the goals set at the beginning of the strategy. Some key aspects to point out are that native linguists are a must, especially for localization purposes. They know the language and market inside out. Also, if the client decides to work with a translation agency, they need to find a translation vendor that is flexible and that is able to adapt to strategic changes as they arise. Likewise, if SEO translation is what the client is looking for, then an SEO translator is essential. Someone who is proficient in technical SEO, off-page and off-page SEO, on-page SEO. If there is a PM involved, it's a good idea to work with a single dedicated PM, which is a project manager. The communication in this case will be better and therefore the processes will be more efficient. Moreover, it is important to make clear whether the client is looking for someone who specializes in a certain field, someone with experience with similar content, for multiple freelancers who will take care of the same project, etc. This will help work towards achieving the results expected. And apart from experience in the field of specialization, translation agencies and translators are encouraged and advised to have a clear value proposition in mind, active social media presence, and show commitment and willingness to learn. That's key. That's really important, especially if there are linguists watching this webinar. Now the technology, once the processes have been mapped out, it is a good time to analyze which technological resources will be valuable for this strategy. When I talk about technology, I'm making reference to the tools, software, and resources that will simplify the team's work and will help them meet their goals. There comes into play the existing technology available and the technology that will be necessary and useful to carry out the strategy. Some examples of these technologies are translation tools. There are web-based and non-web-based tools. These tools are used with the aim of increasing productivity and improving the quality of translation being carried out. Then we have also content authoring tools. That is, tools that will help in improving the final quality of the work. Some examples of these tools are Grammarly, Xbench, which is a quality control tool, just to name but a few, or even Microsoft Word spell check, which is very, very useful in multiple languages. And even though these tools, the ones I'm going to name now, are used to serve specific purposes, I did want to leave them unmentioned, the SEO tools. SEO tools are employed to help optimize web content through the analysis of keywords, backlinks, and many more. Some examples are Ubersuggest, Moz, and Keyword Planner. I would also like to mention content management systems, CMS, which are used to manage content and are really useful when translating websites. One example is WordPress, another one is Contentful, which can be linked via an API integration to automate the workflow between them and the translation tool. Now, apart from the use of technology, I'd like to mention some resources that are key for the project to be completed effectively. We have the glossary, a glossary of terms that helps simplify the linguist's work and ensure that the text remains coherent throughout the project. The style guide for specific content, the company's tone and voice manual, which is key to replicate them when translating the strategy. It is key that the tone and voice, this unique perspective that each brand offers, is still present in this new language, all languages. Although I must say that after researching the markets, and you find out that a different tone will be more appropriate for certain countries, it's vital to know the core of the company and adapt it accordingly, if that's the case. Now it's time to get everything in place and launch the strategy. You have conducted research, you have set the SMART goals, and you have developed the schedule process. There is something that needs to be clear from the very beginning. even before thinking about launching a strategy. And it is that every new market a business enters is a different and particular case. And for that reason, it should be treated as such. Remember that. Every business needs to embrace the opportunity of branching out in a new market, having goals in mind, and a target audience and knowing the challenges they could face. Now we have the fourth good practice, the fourth step. In every aspect of our lives, it is key to learn from mistakes and to celebrate and improve our successes. This also applies to a linguistic strategy. It is a must for the client to carry out market analysis whenever possible, since this will allow them to have a grasp of the potential successes or risks in the new market. All things considered, and from our perspective, it is crucial to build a process that is scalable and that can be adapted over time so that adjustments can be made after analyzing the strategy. Thank you. Thank you so much. Now there are some interesting questions that were asked many times, and I thought it would be a good idea to answer them today. I've chosen four that are very interesting indeed. The first one is there a difference between translation and localization? And the answer is yes. Many people tend to use these words interchangeably, but there are one or two differences. Translation looks for rendering the original text into the target text while maintaining the same meaning as the original text. But the localization seeks to adapt that source text for a new market and audience by taking into consideration regionalisms and expressions and the culture. The culture is at the center of localization. The text can be a product, a service, a software, an app, should be read as if it was created originally in the target language. The second question I chosen is, can we target more than one market at once? Yes, of course it can be done for sure, but every targeting needs many efforts, time, and money. Therefore, as an advice, I would recommend going after markets that are big, try to reach audiences that could become potential clients, and do things step by step, calmly, so that everything goes according to plan. Because going after several markets just for the sake of it doesn't assure you more sales or more leads or more visitors. The important is planning the strategy, researching, and be patient. Then the question number 3 is, what happens if there are many translators working on the same content? Like translators and then reviewers editing those translations. How do we assure the outcome will be coherent? Well, that's what CAT tools, computer-assisted translation tools, are for. There are many tools that can be used in a translation process where glossaries, translation memories, or even style guides can be added. This way, as everything will be stored in this memory, once one linguist finishes their work, the next one can use the translation memory as reference and translate or edit content by remaining consistent with the tone of voice, expressions, terminology, and style. The fourth question, which is kind of interesting, is translating the website the only way to reach new audiences? Well, there are many strategies to reach new markets, that is for sure. But translation, and when I say translation, I mean all of the existing workflows aimed at rendering content for different markets, localization, transcreation, subtitling. Well, translation is one of the easiest and fastest ways. And as I mentioned in the course of my presentation, some people won't buy from a website that is in a foreign language. So we can tell that there is a strong link between languages and the way customers buy online. So it's very important to have that in mind. Well, we have reached the end of this webinar, and I hope it was helpful for you. Please, after watching it, if you have any more questions related to this topic or related topic, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, send me a message. I'll be more than happy to help you. There is also a possibility that I leave a question box on LinkedIn for you to ask as many questions as you like. And again, thank you so much for being here today. And stay tuned for the upcoming webinars. It will be amazing. Bye bye. Thank you.